You can't leave. You're one of us now.
The snow fell thick and silent, muffling the forest like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Each flake drifted down slowly, landing on branches already bowed under the weight, on tents pitched in hurried clusters, on footprints that led nowhere. I had set up camp hours ago, thinking the woods would be still, peaceful, a Christmas spent alone, away from crowds, away from noise. But then I heard it. A faint melody, carried on the wind, broken and stilted. Christmas carols. Only they weren't right. The notes twisted and cracked like the voice of something dying, bending familiar tunes into something unnatural. My heart caught in my chest. I froze, listening, convinced it was a trick of the snow, the trees, my imagination. Then a branch snapped behind me. I spun, breath fogging, eyes straining against the storm. Nothing. Just snow. Just silence. Yet somewhere deeper in the forest, the music pulsed again, stronger, closer, and this time, it sounded like someone, or something, was singing my name. Footsteps pressed into the snow around my tent. I hadn't left, hadn't moved, and yet prints appeared. Too long, too narrow, marching in patterns that made no sense. They led toward me. A whisper slid through the cold air, barely audible over the wind. You shouldn't have come. I wanted to tell myself it was a branch, a trick of the storm, that my mind was playing games. But instinct screamed otherwise. Something was out there watching, waiting. Something patient, ancient, and hungry for Christmas cheer the way the living need air. I swallowed, reaching for the zipper on my tent, and that was when I saw it. A shadow impossibly tall, moving between the trees, pale against the snow, grinning. And then it vanished. The wind had died down by the time I crawled out of my sleeping bag, but the forest didn't feel any quieter. Snow crunched under my boots with each careful step to the fire pit, the sound deafening in the eerie stillness. My breath curled in the freezing air like smoke from a lantern. I had expected isolation to feel peaceful, restorative, the kind of solitude that washes the mind clean after months of crowded streets and Christmas chaos. Instead, it felt heavy, like the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that the singing was just the wind funneling through the trees, bending ice crystals against each other to make a sound. But when I looked around, the snow was unbroken except for my own footprints. No wildlife, no other campers. Nothing. But that melody persisted, fractured and warped, drifting closer with every heartbeat. I crouched near the fire pit and tried to light a match. My hands shook, fingers stiff with cold. The flame sputtered, flickered, then died. Again. I struck another. And another. The fire refused me. I could feel the temperature drop sharply, though the air hadn't changed. It was as if the forest didn't want light. "Hey," I whispered, the word foreign in the cold, empty night. No reply came, except for the faint echo of my own voice, stretched thin by the wind. I went back to the tent, tugging the zipper closed, the canvas creaking in protest. That's when I noticed the footprints again, this time circling the tent. Narrow, too long, moving in impossible angles. I froze. My stomach twisted. I hadn't been out there since setting up camp. I hadn't made them. A voice whispered behind me, soft and deliberate. You shouldn't have come. I jerked around. Nothing. Just the skeletal trees, their branches bowing under snow like bowed heads. My heartbeat hammered in my ears. I told myself it was my imagination. I told myself the wind carried sounds from the valley far below. But the whisper had been sharp, almost cruel. I had heard it. I knew it. I sat inside the tent, knees drawn up, shivering, listening. The melody returned, slower now, deliberate, as if pacing around me. The notes felt wrong in ways I couldn't articulate, familiar yet twisted. My fingers trembled on the zipper. I tried to shut it fully, to trap myself in safety, but the snow outside pressed against the canvas, unnatural, almost alive. The cabin of a nearby ranger station had seemed like a good idea when I'd left town. Maybe another night there, I thought, maybe someone awake, someone normal. But when I peeked outside, trying to trace the source of the singing, the shadows of the forest seemed to twist. Trees leaned over paths I had walked 100 times. Snowdrifts formed shapes I couldn't identify. The world looked wrong, off kilter, and I realized that I wasn't just cold. I wasn't just alone. I was being watched. I remembered the caretaker in the tiny town at the edge of the woods. He had eyed me like I was a fool. "Forests not for holiday cheer," he had said, voice low, almost a growl. "Not for people like you. Not at Christmas." I had laughed it off, a nervous sound I barely recognized as my own. Now, hours later, crouched in my tent as the snow fell heavier, his words clawed at me. Every snapping branch, every whisper of wind, every crackle of frozen ice against itself, it all felt like proof. Then something moved in the trees, just beyond the firelight, though I had thought I had put the fire out hours ago. A figure, tall, impossibly thin, swaying as if carried by the wind, or maybe its own weight. It looked like a man in an old-fashioned coat, one of those long winter coats from postcards I had seen in museums. But the face was blank, pale, smiling in a way that didn't belong. I tried to call out, voice strangled by fear, by cold, by disbelief. "Hello." Nothing. The figure vanished. And yet I knew it hadn't gone far. The temperature dropped again. My breath fogged in tight clouds that lingered too long, curling and twisting into shapes I couldn't bear to watch. Something whispered my name, slow and deliberate, as if savoring the sound. The snow around the tent shifted, not falling naturally, but moving, forming shapes that were almost familiar. Small mounds resembling faces pressed against the canvas, distorted in the white. I could feel panic rising, an uncoiling in my chest. I wanted to pack up to leave, but the storm outside had thickened. Roads would be blocked. Trees could fall. I was trapped in the forest, trapped with whatever this was. And I had the sudden, crushing certainty that it knew I was alone, that it had been waiting. I closed my eyes and tried to steady my breathing, trying to remind myself of what was rational, what was normal. But the rational thoughts slipped as quickly as the snowflakes, melting into fear. When I opened my eyes, a single ornament had appeared in the snow by my tent. A bright, red bauble, swinging slowly though the wind was still. Shattered glass reflected nothing but black sky. I didn't move. I couldn't. My hands shook. My legs refused to straighten. Somewhere deeper in the forest, the singing stopped. Silence pressed down like ice. And then, from the shadowed edge of the tree line, a whisper, dry and brittle as winter leaves. "You shouldn't have stayed." I wanted to tell myself I could ignore it, that I could survive the night. But deep down, I knew the caretaker had been right. The forest wasn't for holiday cheer. And whatever waited for me in the snow, it wouldn't let me leave. The first night passed, or perhaps it didn't. Sleep had been impossible. Caught between the flickering shadows in the tent and the strange music drifting through the trees. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw shapes. Pale faces pressed against snowbanks, shadowy figures moving just beyond the tree line, tiny lights twinkling where no branches could hold them. By dawn, the storm had eased, leaving the forest unnaturally still. The snow glimmered, almost bright, but the beauty offered no comfort. Something had changed in the air, an oppressive weight, like the world itself had been waiting for me to arrive. I packed the minimal supplies I had, ready to hike toward the small ranger station I had passed on the way in. Maybe, I thought, someone awake there could explain. But even as I stepped onto the narrow path, I felt it, the forest watching, breathing around me. Footsteps crunched behind me. I glanced back. Nothing. Yet the rhythm continued, soft, deliberate. I wasn't alone. I remembered the caretaker's words, a low, cautioning tone I had brushed off in my naivety. Forests not for holiday cheer. Not for people like you. Not at Christmas. Now they echoed in my mind, each syllable sharper, a warning I couldn't ignore. Hours into the hike, I stumbled across the remnants of something buried in snow. A journal, half frozen, its leather cover cracked and worn. I knelt, brushing off snow, hands trembling, and opened it. The first entry was dated 50 years ago, December 23rd. We thought it would be a quiet holiday. The forest is heavier than it seems. Darker. Voices in the wind. Laughing, crying. I don't know if it's us hearing things, or the forest hearing us. The handwriting grew shakier with each page, the ink blotting, some words illegible. But one thing became horrifyingly clear. A group of campers, just like me, had vanished in this same stretch of forest decades ago. Every Christmas, they wrote, the forest became alive. Figures appeared, too pale, too thin, singing songs that made the air taste of ash. One page, torn at the corner, had a single, chilling line. They are waiting. And once they notice you, they never let go. I tried to shake it off. Old campers, local legend. Maybe someone survived just to spin a story. Reasonable. But then I heard it. The song, faint, twisted, the same melody from last night. The journal slipped from my hands. Snow crunched beside me. Something moved in the trees. I froze. A figure appeared, tall, impossibly thin, with that same old-fashioned coat, that same featureless smile. My voice caught. Who's there? It tilted its head. No answer. Just a whisper carried in the wind, distant yet intimate. You can't leave. I ran. Branches tore at my coat, snow clinging to my boots. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly, the path I had walked now unrecognizable. Every step felt heavier, every breath sharper, colder. I tripped into a shallow ravine, landing hard on snow and ice, my hands clawing at frozen roots. And then I saw it, the footprints again, hundreds of them now, crisscrossing over one another, as though a dozen people had circled me, watching. Later, I found a clearing with remnants of old campsites. Tents long rotted, fire pits blackened, ornaments half buried in snow. And in the center, a small tree, decorated with toys and trinkets that looked impossibly new, almost fresh. Yet no one had been there for decades. From the shadows came a soft, shivering laugh. I whipped around. A young woman, snow-frozen, cheeks pale, eyes wide. You hear it too, she whispered. The singing. It doesn't stop. It doesn't, ever. I didn't answer. My throat was raw. I watched as she trembled, staring at the trees. They take people every year. We thought we were safe here last Christmas. We were wrong. Her words sank into me. The forest wasn't merely haunted. It was a predator. We moved together, navigating through snow that seemed to thicken with every step. I wanted to believe she could guide me out, that if I followed her, I'd survive. But even with another human near, the forest felt alive. Breathing, watching, calculating. Twigs snapped in patterns that weren't random. Snow shifted beneath our boots unnaturally, forming shapes almost like hands reaching from the ground. As we walked, she told me fragments of the legend, her voice quivering with each word. Decades ago, a group disappeared. People said they were punished, cursed. Some think the forest keeps them, reshaping them, using them. Those who vanish become part of it. The music, the singing, it's them. Or what they've become. They want company. I tried to digest it. Logic refused to settle. Yet signs were all around me. Trees bent toward the path we walked, branches scratching at our faces. Tiny ornaments dangled inexplicably from high limbs, catching the pale light. We saw glimpses of movement, shapes at the edge of vision, never fully human. I began to doubt everything. The woman, the forest, my own senses. Was she real? Was I real? Every snowdrift, every shadow whispered lies. Then the small micro-events escalated. My pack had been zipped shut, but when I checked, it had opened, contents rearranged, a small toy soldier from the abandoned tree in the clearing now sitting atop my backpack. The woman hadn't touched it. We hadn't stopped. A faint, distorted melody started again. Not a song, but words. My name, whispered, elongated, mocking. The woman grabbed my arm. They can hear everything. Every thought, every heartbeat. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But even running felt pointless. The forest reshaped itself constantly. Paths vanished, reappeared, leading nowhere. Branches curled to block escape. Snowdrifts rose as if alive. Paranoia consumed me. Every step I took, I felt eyes on my back, and yet whenever I looked, Nothing was there. At night, we huddled in a ruined cabin I had glimpsed earlier. Broken walls, shattered windows. And yet, inside, the air was thick with the same distorted Christmas scent. Pine, cinnamon, decay. Outside, the forest seemed quiet. Too quiet. She whispered another fragment of the legend. Some who came before, they tried to fight. They made fire, set traps, ran to the nearest road. But the forest doesn't let them go. The music draws them back. Shapes move in the snow, guiding them, shaping them. And when night falls, you see what happens if they catch you. Her words froze me. The thought of being trapped in an endless Christmas nightmare, twisted, reshaped, was unbearable. And then I saw it. Through the broken wall, a figure stood at the edge of the clearing. Not moving, yet impossibly close. Tall, featureless, wearing the coat from my nightmares. Behind it, shapes emerged. Dozens of pale, thin figures, frozen in snow, staring at us. Their eyes. If they had eyes, I didn't see them. Only blankness, smiling mouths. The song, now unbearably loud, rose from the forest, surrounding us, pressing against my mind. I fell back, clutching my ears, screaming. My companion grabbed me, but I couldn't tell if she was holding me to protect me or restrain me. Voices whispered, urgent and overlapping. Stay, stay, join, stay. Time began to warp. Minutes stretched into hours, or maybe collapsed. I couldn't distinguish snow from shadow, movement from stillness. Every step we tried to take, the forest adjusted, twisting paths, folding branches, rearranging the snow, as if it were alive and mocking us. By dawn, the shapes had withdrawn slightly, melting into the white, leaving the forest deceptively calm. The woman sank to her knees, shaking. They don't take everyone immediately. Some nights they toy with you. They watch. They test. I nodded numbly, understanding the horrifying inevitability. The forest wasn't a place. It was a trap. A predator with endless patience. And it had already decided I was prey. Even in the daylight, the snow held its own secrets. Tiny footprints appeared where none had existed. Branches pointed in directions that made no sense. Toys, ornaments, and scraps of old paper littered the paths. Signs that others had been here before us, caught in the same nightmare. And I knew, in the deepest part of myself, that the forest had noticed me. It was waiting, watching. And when night fell again, the horror would not pause. The micro-events, the whispers, the impossible shapes, the shifting snow, they were all building, slowly, inevitably. Each moment I survived, each hour of light, was only a temporary reprieve. The forest, the figures, the song, they were patient, and they would not be denied. I felt my sanity fraying. A sense of dread settled in my chest, heavier than any weight I had ever known. I couldn't trust my senses, the forest, or even the woman beside me. Every glance into the shadows revealed more than emptiness. Every step forward confirmed I was not moving closer to safety. And when the sun finally dipped below the trees, casting long, unnatural shadows across the snow, I understood one immutable truth. Whatever haunted these woods, whatever took those campers decades ago, it wasn't just a legend. It was real. And it was coming for me. Night fell like a blade, sharp and merciless. The forest transformed under the darkness. Every shadow became a threat, every whisper a promise of inevitability. Snow that had seemed inert by day now moved with a subtle intelligence, curling around tree trunks, drifting in unnatural arcs, closing paths we had hoped to take. I followed the woman blindly, our steps slow and hesitant, ears straining for the slightest sound, eyes straining for the faintest movement. And then I heard it. The singing, twisted, warped carols that carried not joy, but malice, echoed from every direction. My head spun. My chest felt tight. It wasn't coming from a single source. It was everywhere. The trees, the snow, the wind, the very air itself seemed to hum with the voices of the lost. "They're close," the woman whispered, her voice trembling so violently I thought she might shatter. "They can hear your thoughts. They know your fears. Stay quiet. Don't move wrong." I tried to nod, but my body refused to obey. Every muscle tensed. frozen in the terror that had become my constant companion. And then I saw them. Figures emerged from the snow. Dozens, pale and thin, featureless faces grinning, each wearing variations of old-fashioned coats, hats, scarves, ornaments dangling from frozen fingers. They didn't walk. They glided, or perhaps the snow itself carried them. Every movement was disjointed yet deliberate, a rhythm that was terrifyingly human, yet not human at all. I stumbled backward. My boots sank into the snow, each step slower than the last. The figures advanced silently at first, then began to sing in unison. The melody was unmistakable. Distorted carols that had haunted me since the first night. The lyrics slurred, names replaced by syllables I didn't recognize, yet my own name emerged somewhere in the rhythm. James. Faraz. The voices hissed, elongated and warped. The woman grabbed my arm. Run. We bolted, crashing through trees and snowdrifts. The forest, as if alive, rearranged itself around us. Familiar paths twisted into dead ends. Snowdrifts rose impossibly fast, blocking our escape. Branches bent toward us like skeletal arms. The singing intensified, echoing from all sides. I tripped. Pain flared in my knee. I tried to push myself up, but my hands sank into the snow. The figures were closer now, sliding silently over the white surrounding us. One reached out, a hand long and thin, tipped with ice that gleamed like glass. I felt a cold pressure against my chest, not touching, not fully materialized, yet horrifyingly real. The woman screamed, a short, sharp sound that pierced the singing. "Don't let them get inside your head," she yelled, her eyes wide, frantic. "Don't think. Don't." Her voice cut off abruptly. A figure loomed directly behind her, impossibly tall, coat dragging in the snow. Its face was featureless, pale as frost, grinning. It raised an arm. She froze. And then, she vanished. I screamed. My voice joined the chorus, and for a moment, I thought the snow itself swallowed the sound, turning it into another warped carol. Panic consumed me. Every rational thought vanished. I ran blindly, tripping, falling, sliding, unable to tell which direction led to safety. Every tree, every shadow, every movement seemed orchestrated to trap me. The forest had become a labyrinth, a predator with infinite patience. I remembered the journal, the caretaker, the woman's warnings. They hadn't been exaggerating. They weren't stories. They were instructions for survival that I had failed to heed. I clutched my head, desperate to block out the singing, the whispers, the distorted names echoing in my skull. And then I stumbled into a clearing. The snow was deeper here, untouched, pristine, and in the center stood a tree unlike any I had seen. Its branches were blackened, twisted ornaments dangling grotesquely, some glittering, some shattered. At the base, a circle of figures crouched, frozen in place, heads bowed, moving as one, like a single organism. They lifted their heads. And they stared. I tried to run. My legs refused. My breath came in ragged gasps. They began to move toward me, slow, deliberate. The singing resumed, louder, more urgent, wrapping around me like chains. I stumbled backward into the snow, eyes locked on the tallest figure at the center, the one who had taken the woman. Its featureless face grinned wider. "You should have stayed," it whispered, though the sound didn't come from its lips. It echoed in my mind, twisting thoughts, pulling at the edges of my sanity. I fell, hands digging into the snow. And then the world shifted. The figures multiplied, countless now, emerging from every shadow, every tree, every snowdrift. The forest itself seemed to pulse with life, closing in, folding in, reshaping around me. Time fractured. Seconds stretched into eternities, then collapsed. I could hear my own heartbeat, my own thoughts, bouncing back at me from every direction. A single word echoed, horrifyingly clear: join. I tried to resist. I screamed. I fought the pull, clawed at the snow, at the air, at the world itself, as if tearing reality apart could save me. But they were patient, immortal. I was prey, and prey always loses. Then I saw the woman again. She was suspended above the snow, pale, lifeless, ornaments hanging from her hair and coat. The tallest figure extended its hand toward her, and she vanished into it. The snow around me shivered, tiny forms rising like mist, faces, hands, torsos, twisting into the air before solidifying into figures I recognized from the journal. Decades of campers, lost, reshaped, returned as extensions of the forest's will. I staggered backward, a scream lodged in my throat. They approached, moving as one. The singing was a roar now, filling my mind, my chest, my blood. Names, voices, distorted laughter, all blending into a single truth. Resistance was futile. I fell to my knees, collapsing under the weight of inevitability. And then the closest figure reached out. Its hand brushed my cheek, cold as ice, burning like fire. Memories I hadn't lived flashed across my mind. Visions of past campers, trapped, screaming silently, joining the chorus of the forest. "You," it whispered. "You belong." I could feel it. The pull, the inevitability, the forest pressing against every fiber of my being. I tried to close my eyes, tried to fight the rising panic, tried to scream. But my body wouldn't respond. My mind was caught in the web of whispers, the distorted carols, the shapes moving in impossible ways. And then the world shifted again. I was no longer in the clearing. I was surrounded by trees, taller than the sky, snow pressing against my chest. Shadows stretched and twisted, forming faces, mouths, eyes that didn't exist. The singing had stopped, replaced by silence that roared in my skull. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. And yet I could feel them, countless, patient, watching, waiting. A single figure approached, the one I had glimpsed first. It leaned close. Its featureless face smiled. And in a voice that was my own, but not my own, it whispered, "Welcome home." I felt my mind fracture, slipping away, pieces of my identity pulled into the forest's collective memory. My thoughts were no longer mine. My memories merged with decades of lost campers, reshaped, trapped, singing, dancing, frozen in snow and shadow. I wanted to fight, wanted to resist, but resistance was meaningless. The forest had chosen me. It had been waiting. And now, like countless before me, I belonged. Time collapsed. Space twisted. The clearing, the trees, the snow, the figures, all fused into a single endless white void. And yet, somewhere in the distance, faintly, the warped Christmas melody began again. Not for me, not yet, but for the next one who wandered too far into the forest. Too curious, too foolish. I was gone. And the forest waited. The snow fell quietly the morning after. Too quietly, if anything could be too quiet. The forest looked untouched, pristine. The sun, pale behind heavy clouds, cast long jagged shadows across the snow that might have been familiar, if you ignored the shapes that moved slightly at the edge of vision. I didn't exist in that world anymore. Not as a person. Not as myself. My name had been swallowed, my memories dispersed, folded into the countless others that the forest had claimed over decades. Somewhere beyond the tree lane, a hiker, or perhaps a camper, was approaching. Maybe they had seen the smoke of a long-dead fire, or glimpsed the tiny, unnatural ornaments hanging from blackened branches. Perhaps they were like I had been, seeking solitude, a quiet Christmas away from crowds. But the forest knew they were coming. The melody began again, distant at first, almost polite. Then it twisted, stretched, and grew into the familiar warped carol, singing their name before they had even crossed the first drifts. In the clearing where I had finally succumbed, the twisted tree still stood, its ornaments glinting, catching the weak light. Beneath it, the snow had shifted, formed into patterns that no human could have made. Tiny impressions, footprints that began and vanished, snaking toward the horizon as if the forest itself were breathing, walking, stretching to welcome the next victim. The memory of what I had been, who I had been, lingered faintly in the whiteness, like a shadow behind glass. I could see it in the shapes. Frozen faces pressed against the snow, subtle movements that hinted at life within death. Patterns forming that whispered my name, my fears, my regrets. The forest remembered me. The forest never forgets. I felt the others, the countless campers, travelers, wanderers who had vanished over the decades, watching silently from the branches, the snow, the wind itself. Some were frozen in mid-motion, as if caught in a dance that had lasted 100 Christmases. Others had become one with the forest, their shapes indistinct, melding with shadows, snow, ice, ornaments, trees. And yet, every figure had eyes, or the suggestion of eyes, that turned toward the next traveler who might enter the woods unprepared, unknowing, foolish. I realized then that this was the forest's purpose. Not simply to scare, not simply to consume, but to perpetuate. To ensure that the cycle never ended. Each year, a few would wander too far, hear the music too clearly, notice the snow moving in impossible ways, and the forest would claim them. Not in anger, not in malice, but as inevitability, a predator exercising patience across decades, centuries. I had been a guest, then prey, and finally, just another part of its memory, another layer of the snow, another figure silently guiding the next unfortunate soul. Sometimes, the forest allows glimpses of what it takes. Snow drifted, shifting just slightly, forming faces in the white, distorted and frozen in perpetual terror. Tiny ornaments would sway, though the wind was still. Shadows stretched in impossible directions. Those who approached would notice only the faintest hints, a branch shaped like a hand, a sound that might have been a whisper, a fleeting figure at the edge of vision. They would think themselves lucky, alert, cautious. But the forest was patient. The forest does not rush. And it remembers. Far beyond the clearing, I could sense the world moving on. Towns, lights, fireplaces, children opening presents. The world outside continued, oblivious, ignorant of the horror hidden beneath the snow and trees. I had tried to cling to the notion of time, to logic, to order. But all of that mattered nothing here. Hours, days, decades. None of it existed. Only the forest and its endless patience. Only the inevitable claim of those who wandered too far. Sometimes, I sensed the panic of new arrivals. Their hearts pounding, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. They heard the music, and I could feel the thrill of terror coursing through them. The forest funneled it, amplified it, feeding it back in distorted melodies, whispers, footsteps in the snow. And I was there, now a shadow in the branches, a whisper in the wind, guiding, observing, remembering. I tried to remember myself, the person I had been before the forest claimed me. I could recall the crunch of snow beneath my boots, the smell of cold pine, the fleeting hope of a quiet Christmas. But these memories were fragmented, slipping through my awareness like water. Faces, voices, touches. They merged with those who had come before, with the shapes that now existed solely as part of the forest. Identity dissolved. Self dissolved. Fear persisted, eternal. A single ornament hung in the distance, bright red against the white. It had been broken, cracked, perhaps shattered in some long-ago attempt to resist the inevitable. Yet it swayed gently, suspended in the air though no wind moved it. And I realized, as I had known in the deepest corners of my awareness, that this ornament would witness the next arrival, the next stumble into the snow, the next moment of fragile human hope. And the forest would wait, patiently, eternally, as it always had. Sometimes, when I think of it, I imagine the townsfolk, the travelers, the few who escaped the forest's grasp. They tell stories of distorted music, snow that moves on its own, shadows that stretch too long. But no one truly believes them. Not until the next Christmas. Not until the next wanderer disappears into the silence. The legend grows, fading in some places, whispered in others. And the forest waits. I watch. I wait. I am part of it now. Not entirely alive. Not entirely dead. My memories, my thoughts, my fears. They are threads in the tapestry of the forest, woven into the snow, the trees, the shadows. Every crackling branch, every distorted carol, every impossible footprint carries pieces of me. And every year, a new traveler comes, hears the song, notices the snow shift, and the forest claims them, just as it claimed me. And the forest waits. In the rare moments when the wind calms, when the snow lies still and the sun casts a pale, weak light across the white, I sense the silence. But it is never true silence. A faint melody lingers, distant and distorted, carrying fragments of voices from decades past. I hear my own, once clear and human, now twisted into something eternal. The forest is patient, immortal, indifferent, And the next Christmas, it will call again. The snowdrifts shift slightly, forming faces and hands that seem to reach out, just barely, as if to warn the next traveler. But there is no warning, only inevitability. And those who wander too far will hear the song. They will see the impossible footprints. They will glimpse figures in old-fashioned coats, frozen smiles, eyes that are nothing and everything. I can still feel the panic in my chest when I sense a new presence. It is immediate, sharp, electric. The forest feeds on it, amplifies it, bends it into distorted carols that echo across the trees. I am there, too, in fragments, in whispers, in shadows. I do not want this. I do not want them to suffer as I have. But resistance is meaningless. The forest's claim is absolute. Its patience is endless. Its hunger is inevitable. And so I watch silently as snowdrifts shift, as shadows stretch, as the melody begins again. The sun dips, pale and fragile, behind the snow-laden trees. Another traveler stumbles into the clearing. Their eyes widen at the impossible ornaments, the snow shaped into faces and hands. The wind carries a whisper, a name I once knew as my own. The melody begins, faint at first, then distorted, warped, insistent. And I know, the forest has chosen again. I have no voice to scream, no hands to resist, only the faint, terrible memory of who I was, echoing faintly in the snow, waiting to guide the next soul into inevitability. The forest waits. The snow shifts. The melody begins. And the cycle continues.